What's up, Experience Live? You guys feeling good this weekend? So glad you guys are here. I want to welcome those of you at our other campuses downtown in Amarillo. Also, those of you watching at Church Online. Welcome to week 2 of At the Movies. And to be honest, I love this series for one reason. I get to watch a lot of movies and try to decide what we want to do. And this was particularly fun doing 80s movies. And I finally settled on one that was one of my favorites growing up. And we're just going to jump right in to the clip. We present to you Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I absolutely love that movie. And in the spirit of Indiana Jones, I've been working on something all week that I want to try for you here today. But I need a volunteer, and it has to be somebody on the second row. So you guys are lucky. Who wants to be my volunteer? You don't have to get up on stage or anything. Come on, man. Albert? All right, you can stay right there. You can stay right there. Grab a bulletin. And point it at me like it's a gun or something. Or like it's a ninja star. And look real mean if you could. All right. All right. You ready, man? You trust me? Are you sure? No, dude. You don't trust me. Don't trust me. I've never tried it before. You can sit down. Thanks for being willing, though. You're way too trusting of a guy for sure. You know, there's so many different parallels I could have made in this movie. You could have done the whole, reading the book to kind of navigate the traps or whatever. You could have done the whole walk of faith thing. But I wanted to go a little bit different direction. I wanted to talk about how everyone in this movie risked everything in the pursuit of this one prize. In this case, it was the Holy Grail. And Indiana himself, he lost some relationships, and like every scene of the movie, he almost died. And so, he was just sold out to the calling of obtaining this prize. And I want to talk about today how that relates to us and our relationship with God. And first, I just want to turn to Luke 14 if you have a Bible. And if you don't have a Bible, or if it's not in a translation you can easily understand, you can pick up one of these at all our campuses. They're free. And take one of those with you. Luke chapter 14, what's happening here is Jesus is teaching. He's going through all these parables, and he's attracted this large crowd. And people come in, hanging out, kind of want to see what's going on. And Jesus does something that they don't really expect. Chapter 14 and verse 25 says this: a large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, "If you want to be my disciple, you must hate everyone else by comparison. Your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple." So I want you to put yourself in the shoes of these people that were following Jesus, right? They came out probably because their friends did or whatever, and they want to see what's going on. And all of a sudden, Jesus says, "Hey, if you want to follow me, you got to hate your family compared to how much you love me. And oh, by the way, you might have to die for me." I don't know about you, but I'm sure it came as a shock to these people, right? They're probably like, whoa, I just came to hopefully see some crippled dude walk or something cool like that, and I don't know if I'm quite down for dying for you just yet. See, Jesus wasn't impressed by the crowd. He kind of saw through them. They weren't there for the right reasons. He goes on in verse 28. "But don't begin until you count the cost, for who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, 'There's the person who started that building and couldn't afford to finish it.'" So again, Jesus isn't impressed by the crowds, right? He's not like, "Whoa, look at all these people following me around. I must be doing something right." He knew that they weren't really calculating what was going to cost them to be able to follow him. Because the bottom line is, for all of us, it's costly to follow Jesus. It's costly. If you're going to follow him, it's going to cost you something. There's a book we've read as a staff, and it's available in all of our resource centers at all the campuses. And it's also part of the LTG training track if you're in one of those, but it's called The Heavenly Man. And it's about a guy named Brother Yun. And it could be pronounced Yun, but this is Texas, so I'm going to say Yun for the sake of this message because it just makes more sense to me. But he valued Christ above everything else. He was miraculously saved. God did some miracles through him that you'll have to read it to believe it. And he was eventually imprisoned for his faith. He was tortured. I mean, unspeakable things were done to this guy for the sake of his faith. And he spoke into this subject, and I want to read to you what he says. He says, I want to share with you the key secret for how Christians can experience a continual flow of living water in their lives. In my opinion, this key is the one major thing missing in the Western church and among sections of the body of Christ in other parts of the world. The answer to experiencing God's living water is not to seek more and more Bible teaching. The answer is not to attend a Christian conference or seek new ministers with new messages. Please listen carefully. The key for experiencing the flow of God's living water in your life is obedience. Most Christians I've met in the Western world have plenty of Bible knowledge, but they do not experience the living water flowing from their lives because of their disobedience. See, God doesn't want you to know everything and do nothing. He would rather you know little and act on that little in obedience, and then he will give you more. He doesn't want you to know everything and do nothing. That doesn't make any sense. He wants followers that are willing to do something for him. Chris talked about this a couple of months ago, the whole idea of knowledge-based discipleship versus obedience-based discipleship. You know, it's not about what you know, it's about what you do. Again, knowing everything doesn't mean a whole lot if you're not doing something. And so I want to ask you guys a question, and just by a show of hands, you don't have to feel pressure to raise your hand, but I just want to ask you to think about your life and ask yourself this question. How many of you want to live a meaningful life for God and be used by him to do something special? As believers, as Christ followers, we should all want to make a difference for him. We want him to work through us and to affect the people around us. That should be something that we all strive for. But here's the fact, is if you want to be used by God, it's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you something, absolutely. But the reward that you'll gain from that is far greater, because you'll gain his best in your life. That should be what we're all after, right? I don't want my best. I want God's best. But it will cost you something. There are tons of biblical examples of this. If you look at either the Old Testament or the New Testament, I don't care who you pick, whoever in the Bible was used by God to do something awesome, it required a major adjustment in their life. Major adjustment. If you look at Moses, a bush caught on fire and told him to go to Egypt, right? That kind of disrupted his schedule a little bit. If you look at Noah, he spent somewhere around 100 years building a boat in the middle of a drought. That probably affected his daily schedule, don't you think? Look at Paul. He had to undergo a pretty significant career change, right? Change. He went from persecuting Christians to being like the leading force in spreading the gospel. Obedience always, always, always equals adjustment. If you're going to obey God, you have to adjust your life to him. So I want to speak for just a second to the believers that are here, the Christ followers. If you fall into that category, I want you just for a second in your own heart and mind just to take kind of a spiritual inventory. What does your relationship with God look like? Is it healthy? Is it in good shape? Or is it unhealthy? And let me tell you one way you can know. If you're not spending consistent time with him, and by consistent I mean somewhat daily time, reading the Bible and praying, your relationship with him, it's not good. It's not good. I mean, how can it be, right? Your relationship with God is like any other relationship in your life. It's like me saying, my relationship with my wife is awesome. I haven't seen her in 3 or 4 weeks, and I only go to her if I need something, but hey, I'm not cheating on her, we're still married, everything's great. It doesn't make sense, right? A relationship takes investing time. You have to put the work into the relationship. And the fact is, having a relationship with God is practiced. It's practiced, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. A couple weeks ago, I was in the front yard with my daughter, Taylor. She's 9, and she was with her neighbor friend, and they were playing softball. And the neighbor girl was trying to teach Taylor how to hit a softball. So they had kind of a fake squishy softball, you know, and they were practicing. And they asked me to hit them some grounders and some pop flies. And I thought, okay. You know, I played baseball growing up, played some softball in my later years. And I was kind of excited because this is my one chance to be the all-American dad, you know, like in the front yard, playing with the kids. And so I was kind of excited. And so you know how this works. You know, you toss the ball up to yourself and you hit it. Very, very simple. So I tossed the ball up and I took a big swing at it, and I missed. Didn't panic though. I'm confident in my skills. So I threw up another ball and I swung and I missed again. And I missed again and I missed again. And you may not believe me when I tell you this, but I probably missed in excess of 30 times in a row. I could not hit the ball. And Taylor's standing there, she's like, Daddy, maybe you should try throwing it a little higher next time. And I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Let Daddy work, you know. You don't know what you're talking about. And finally, I made contact. It wasn't great, but the ball advanced, so I was excited with that. And so I thought I'd figured something out, so I threw up another one. And I missed probably another 20 times. It was humiliating, you know. The neighbor girl's like, you're so close. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. And of course, my daughter, you know, her second try, she gets a hit. And I'm broken. I'm broken by the whole thing. And fast forward a couple of weeks, and this past week, the leadership team, once a year, we have a thing called the LT Fun Days. And it's just like our time to just stay, you know, we stay in town for a couple of days and just do some fun stuff together. And it's basically a couple of days we do a bunch of different sports, and we compete against each other to see who's more awesome. Barry Alvis, our prayer pastor, always wins, in case you're wondering. But this time, we did something different. We went to the batting cages. And of course, because of my experience previously, I was going in there with zero confidence. I mean, zero. I thought, great, I just don't want to come in last, you know. So I get in the cage, and we're like at 70 or 75 miles an hour, and I couldn't hit the ball. I was swinging late. And so I got a chance to sit out there and watch the other guys hit, and they were all, of course, doing better than me. But John Bradshaw, he's our CFO. He's a baseball guy. He goes to the cages all the time. And so I was watching him hit the ball, and I was learning some things, you know, how he's holding his bat, how he's standing, how he's swinging. And I kind of put some things together, like, okay, I'm going to try that. But it took me getting back in the cage, right, and taking some pitches before I could kind of work that into practice. And the more I did that, the better I got, and I was able to make solid contact. And I felt like an adult, you know, that had some hand-eye coordination. But our relationship with God is the exact same way. It's practiced. It's learned. First, you have to put yourself in a position to listen. And the only way you can do that is by creating space in your schedule where you can clear everything else out, and you can kind of sit and pray, read his Bible, and just put yourself in a position to quiet everything else out and hear him. You can't do that without making time. The second thing you have to do is this whole hearing from God thing it's a practiced thing. You have to be able to hear his voice and figure out for yourself, what does that mean for God to speak to you? And is that him that's wanting me to do this, or is it just me? And then you have to move into a phase of obedience where you step out in faith and you act on whatever it is that you think God might be telling you to do. You know what happens when you do that? God rewards your obedience, and you start to put the pieces together and figure out what that relationship means in your life, and it becomes very, very real. And before you know it, you find yourself right in the middle of God's will for your life because you're listening and you're hearing his voice and you're obeying it. That's what your relationship with God should look like. But again, it's not going to happen just by learning all kinds of stuff. You have to put it into practice. It takes some action. You've got to do something with it. My story is this. I was raised in church. I mean, I lived in church. I did live in church my whole life. I mean, we were there every time the doors were open. I've heard probably thousands of sermons. I don't need another sermon. I know a lot of stuff that I don't do. And I don't know about you guys, but from being in ministry as long as I have and just growing up in the church, I saw people do stupid, stupid things in the name of God. I saw them act terrible ways, doing a lot of damage to the church and to just Christ's name and his reputation. And I am so sick and tired of fake people and people that pretend to be one thing when in reality there's something totally different. I was like that most of my life. Just back and forth, nothing real about my faith. So tired of it, because the fact is, there is a world around us that is lost and going to spend eternity in hell. There is so much on the line. What good does it do for us to be fake and pretend to be something we're not? And it's not that we have to be perfect, but we have to live a real, genuine life seeking God and following Christ no matter what the cost. That's what the world needs. The world's had enough fake. You probably have enough stories of people that were driven away from church by that same thing. I want to be the real thing, and I want this church to be the real thing. Not perfect people, but people that are after God's heart and willing to follow Christ no matter the cost. It doesn't make any sense to be fake when there's so much on the line. It makes no sense. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul is talking, and I like the way he uses a lot of analogies to explain things because it makes them a little bit clearer. He's talking about running a race here in verse 24. He says, "Don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should." I don't know if you watch any of the Olympics, but I watched way too much Olympics. And I saw a lot of the track and field, and I'm always intrigued by these guys because they may be running like a 9 or 10 second race, but their lives for years leading up to that moment are just dominated by this laser focus on that finish line. The way they eat, the train, I mean, everything that they have is poured into this one race where they'll give it everything they have with their eyes on the finish line, all for that moment when they cross the finish line and hopefully they obtain the prize, which is in this case would be a gold medal, right? And Paul is saying our relationship with God, our life should be that way. Not just, wandering around aimlessly, but with purpose in every step, seeking God and straining forward for that finish line. What's the finish line for us? It's when we cross over from this life into eternity. And it happens for everybody. And our hope is that our prize, it's not a medal. It's an eternity with him, because we all stand before him and give an account for what we've done. And you're going to either hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant," or you're going to hear, "Depart from me. I don't know you." We've got to be running with purpose in every step. This life matters. Let me contrast something for you. You look at Jesus' disciples, right? They dropped everything they had and all their family, friends, or whatever, and they followed Jesus, and most of them died horrible, horrible deaths defending the faith. We talked about Brother Young and all the things he went through just for the sake of the gospel, and then I look at my life and I just think, how selfish can I be? I'm not even willing to carve out 10 or 20 minutes a day just to pray and seek God because I'm too busy. What is that? I don't want to go to church because, the Cowboys are playing or whatever and everything, that whole thing. And I don't want to give because I need more and more money to make my life more comfortable with stuff I don't need. I don't want to volunteer because it may cost me too much time or effort. You see the disconnect there? Is Christ really the central focus of your life? And I don't know what this means for you, but everyone should be challenged by it. Maybe you're a father and a dad, and it's time for you to step up and become the man of God that he's called you to be, and start being the spiritual leader of your household. That takes a lot of courage to do. Maybe you're a student and you're just wasting too much of your life on useless things, or maybe you're just one of those that are in the crowd and not really following Jesus, and there's just a lot of fake in your life, and you're living this double life, and it's time to get right. Maybe you're being convicted about how to spend your money. Paul is saying we should be living our lives with that end goal in mind. And again, we're all going to give an account. And maybe you're here and you're realizing that you've never committed your life to Christ, and you're one of that crowd that's just kind of showing up to see what's going on, and there's no relationship there. And maybe you're going to be one on that day when you stand before a holy God and have to give an account for your life. You're going to be trying to stack up all of your good deeds, hoping that it's good enough and you've done enough good. Because here's the thing. The Bible tells us that there will be people that come before him on that day and say, Lord, look at all the stuff we've done for you. We've taught in your name. We've done miracles. And he says, depart from me. I don't know you. It's not about just the good things you do. Ephesians 2:9 says this, salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can boast about it. It's not about what we've done. It's about what he did. And in Romans 5:8, he says, but God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. And since we have been made right in God's sight by the blood of Christ, he will certainly save us from God's condemnation. How are we made right in God's sight? By the blood of Christ, and by accepting that free gift of salvation that he offers us, so we can begin a relationship with God through Jesus Christ and through our faith in him. And we can know what it means to live a life for him and to experience his best in our life. And if you're making that commitment today, first of all, that's awesome. There's no greater thing that you could ever do. And we want to ask that you let us know about it. And the way you can do that is just by taking your bulletin at the bottom. There's a connection card. Check committing my life to Christ, and you can take it to the the Next Step Center at all of our campuses. And there's somebody there that'll give you a free leather Bible. They'll answer any questions you might have if you need somebody to talk to. But you can start over and experience all God has for you in this life. And that's what we're here for, not to waste our existence on this earth. For all of us, we're going to be worshiping here in a minute at all of our campuses. We're going to do this song called The Stand, and it simply talks about total surrender to God. So it's saying, I see everything that God's done for me, sending his son to die, and all the sacrifice that he made for me because he loved me so much. So what is my response going to be? You heard the mean, evil guy at the end say, it's time for you to decide what you believe. And I think that's his message for us today. Do you really believe he is who he says he is, and he can do what he says he can do? Or are you just playing the game? And the chorus to The Stand says, I'll stand with my arms high, my heart abandoned, in awe of the one who gave it all. All I am is yours. And maybe that needs to be your response today, that you're surrendering every part of your life, holding nothing back. And God, I'm going to be committed to this walk with you, and I want to be used by you to do something awesome. There's nothing God can't do with a heart that's submitted to him. Nothing. The people in the Bible, they're just normal people that decided, you know what? I'm going to commit to this thing, and I'm going to surrender everything I have. There's nothing he can't do through you. But it takes a heart that's surrendered to him. There's going to be prayer teams at the front. If you just need someone to pray with you, or you're being convicted about something, or you're just going through something you need somebody to pray for you about, please take advantage of them. And as we sing that, just again, allow God to deal with your heart and allow him to show you things in your life that don't please him, and be willing to step out and do something about it. Let's pray. God, we thank you for your word. We thank you for Jesus. And we thank you, God, for the awesome miracle of salvation and that free gift of forgiveness and reconciliation to you. God, how amazing is it that you can use a normal, average person like all of us to do something great in your kingdom. God, I just pray that we would all realize that we are tools to be used by you, and there's nothing we can't accomplish. God, help us to be totally committed to you and surrendered. God, today we surrender our lives to you. I pray that you would shake us awake and that we would be just discontented with fake in our lives, God, that you would quickly convict us and we would quickly change if we slide into that again. God, we want to be the real deal. There's too much on the line. God, use us, speak to us, give us faith that's real. For me, God, I want to step up today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thanks for checking out one of our messages today. If you made a decision to commit your life to Christ, I'd love to know about it. You can email me at chris@experiencelifenow.com. Also, if you're interested in taking a next step, check out our website at experiencelifenow.com and click on Next Steps. Let us know if we can ever serve you in any way, and we look forward to seeing you soon.